Hi guys, James at Rampant Lion Reviews again for you today with another beer review. For this one, we are going to stick to Hong Kong and we're going to return to a brewery that has now featured on the channel quite a few times before. Now, I've had some really nice beers from these guys over the last year or two, a good few different styles, and if people were to ask me about this brewery, I would say that they are very solid all round. I've had some really nice lagers from them, quite a few different IPAs, and also a couple of interesting sour beers. These guys are one of the Hong Kong breweries that I would highly recommend you check out. But the beer that we're going to have a look at today is a style that I have had from them before. It's also the third and final review that I'm doing from a three-part release that this brewery did a couple of months ago, and the first two beers that I tried from this release have been very nice. So I'm quite curious to see how this last one is going to turn out. Hopefully it's as good as the other ones. So yeah, hopefully this is another good beer. Hopefully it makes for an interesting review, and as always, I hope that you guys watching enjoy my take on this one as well. So yeah, for this review then, like I said, we are going to stick to Hong Kong. We are going to stay on the Kowloon side this time and go round to an area called Sampo Kong, and that is very close to Diamond Hill railway station, I should say as well, but that means that we are going to have a look at another beer from the wonderful Deadman Brewery. So this particular beer is called Happy Camping. It comes in at 6.5% ABV, and they're describing this one as a Bretted Cherry Sour. So yeah, the last one that we did was the Frank on Sled, which was the Bretted Orange Sour, and then before that we had the Scout's Honour, which was a Bretted Saison. But yeah, both of those beers were very nice, and I have to say, yeah, I am quite curious to see how this last one's going to turn out, the Cherry Bretted Sour. So yeah, let's crack on with this one then and see how we go. These three beers, of course, were released a couple of months ago, and they got, I think the Frank on Sled won a silver in one of the Asian beer cups, if I'm not mistaken. But yeah, let's crack on with this one then and see what this beer is going to have in store for us. So, as always with my reviews then, I'll tell you a little bit about the brewery before we taste the beer. If you want to get straight to the tasting though, just fast forward. All the usual links can be found in the video description below. That's the brewery website, the link to my other reviews that I've done from Deadman Brewery before, and we will no doubt add more to that list at some point in the near future. But there's all the usual social media down there. If you want to see more reviews, do please consider subscribing to the channel. The support you give is massively appreciated, and remember, you can go into the channel homepage and search for beer using the geography tagging system. So just go in there, use the little search bar, put in your hometown, state, county, province, whatever you like. If I've reviewed beers from the area that you search for, they will pop up. Failing that though, you can check out the playlist of beers from different countries. You'll find this one in the Hong Kong playlist, along with a number of other things. That's being added to very regularly, of course, because I am based here in Hong Kong, but do make sure you check out the playlist of beers from other countries as well, because there are some very interesting things on the channel these days, even if I do say so myself. But yeah, let's go on to my brewery notes then, and I'll tell you a wee bit about Deadman Brewery once again then. So, Deadman Brewery, as I've mentioned to you already, are based in Sampo Kong in Kowloon in Hong Kong, and the brewery was founded back in 2018 by Jerry Ko and Sherman Chan. So these guys are both Hong Kongers, and they were old high school friends that used to play basketball together very often. But Sherman had a sports bar in Kwun Tong called The Stadium, and he discovered craft beer through the salespeople that were supplying him, and he basically wanted to get some more interesting beers to serve in the bar, and he started to look more down the craft beer route. Jerry, on the other hand, was apparently exposed to craft beer while he was in Canada studying veterinary science, and this prompted him to start homebrewing for himself, which apparently he used to do on his rooftop. But he then bumped into an old friend on a tour of the Lion Brewery who was interested in starting his own brewery as well, and things went from there. And it just so happened that that friend was Sherman. So they apparently chose the name Deadman because everyone in Hong Kong is, as they put it, a dead man walking, working their arses off basically. So this plays into the brewery's kind of skull and zombie artwork that you see on all other things. You can see it on this one. We'll take a closer look at that later on. But the first beer that they produced was the Dirty Paleo, and this was released back in 2018. So the first head brewer of Deadman Brewery was Jason Lee. Now, Jason studied chemical engineering at Hong Kong University of Science and Technology, and apparently during this course he took a trip to a brewery in mainland China, and it was this that inspired him to go on to become a brewer. So when he got home, From that trip, he googled beer in Hong Kong and Munzen popped up, and so he joined them as a brewing intern starting in the summer of 2017. But later, he went on to work for Young Master, where he started on the packaging line, and he worked his way all the way up to senior brewer. So he also started a brand called OCBD Beer in 2020 with his friend Chung Ka Ming, and then he joined Deadman as their head brewer in July of 2020, and he stayed with them until September of 2024 when he moved to England to brew for Curious Brewery in Ashford in Kent in the southeast. But Deadman Brewery these days are operating a 500 litre Chinese brew kit. They're currently producing around 6,000 litres per month from what I understand, which translates to about 70,000 litres of beer per year, and the beers were originally released in bottles, but they switched to cans in 2020 after purchasing an American canning line, and apparently they're planning to open their own bar at some point in the fairly near future. But over the years they've continued to develop new recipes and expand the brewery's fermentation capacity and build up their sales. The main man in the sales regard is Ashwan Prabhu, who's known locally as Deadman Ash. You can see him in my Out and About video that I did. But yeah, the Deadman artwork is of course one of the first things you'll notice about Deadman Brewery. It apparently is the brainchild of Jerry, and then the brewery workers basically have a few beers to brainstorm the name of any new beer that they produce, and then the final sketch is passed on to a professional ghost artist who adds colour and then finishes the idea before the beer is released. But yeah, as of May 2025, when I'm filming this review for you, these guys have produced around 75 different kinds of beer according to Untappd, and that number will no doubt continue to increase as time goes on. But like I say, they do a wide variety of different styles. Probably my favourite beers from these guys would be the 5,000 Years Pilsner and the Hop Robber West Coast Double IPA. Those are very, very nice beers. But yeah, that is, as I say, everything I can really tell you about Deadman Brewery for the moment. If you want to learn more about these guys, you can check out the brewery website. You can follow them on Facebook and Instagram to keep up to date with all the latest goings on, and you can check out the Rate Beer, Untappd and Beer Advocate pages to learn a wee bit more about all the different beers that these guys have done. And you can check out my Out and About video that I did at one of their tacos nights recently as well, which those are always very, very fun. But yeah, let's leave it at that for our history section and go on and have a little look at the beer itself. So I'll just wipe it down because obviously it's getting a bit hot here toward the summer in Hong Kong, so the bottles tend to get a little bit sweaty. But yeah, anyway, you can see the artwork on this one. Happy camping. I do like that. He's just kind of chilling there with his feet in the fire. Not a skull, this one actually. This one's more like a, what would that be, a goblin or something like that? So yeah, I have to say I do quite like the artwork on this one. Very, very nice once again from Deadman. There you can see on the side of the bottle there one of the Deadman symbols, and it tells you a little bit about this beer on this side as well. So it says, this Brett Cherry Sour delights with light funk and oak character, complemented by luscious cherry and strawberry notes, a lactic tartness and a floral hint of rosé. This should be enjoyed with an eggplant parmigiana. Can't say, I have to admit I'm not a great fan of eggplant. But yeah, nicely presented this one. There is the Deadman bottle cap, as you can see, the little skull on it, which I have to say I do really like. But yeah, I think we can, we've said everything we really need to about this one. 6.5% Bretted Cherry Sour, this one. Yeah, I would be curious to know where they source their cherries from, because obviously I'm used to the Stensberg cherries from Denmark. But yeah, let's get this guy out into the glass and see what we have then. A little bit of smoke on the opening there. And yeah, we'll just go for it. So, see, that does look very nice. I'll just sugar up the bottom. There doesn't seem to be too much in the way of sediment there, but obviously we want a little bit of that in the sample that we get for the aroma and things. But yeah, there we go. Let me just line this up so that my OCD is happy, and there we go. So yeah, I've poured maybe about 2/3 of the beer straight here. We've poured about 2/3 of the beer out and into the glass, and you can see that it poured with about a half finger of a frothy, I would say slightly tinted white head. If I bring that up to the camera, you can see there on the surface we've got some medium kind of size bubbles, and it gets a little bit foamier the further up the head that you go, and that head is just fading away to be a very thin foamy layer on the surface, and you've got that nice thicker ring around the edge of the glass there, which looks very, very nice. Colour wise, if we shine the light through this one, it's actually kind of you know, when you take it away from the light, it does have a little bit more of a kind of slightly cherry colour tinge to it in a sense, but yeah, it's actually more of a kind of rich amber. It's along the lines of a more caramelly leaning West Coast IPA in terms of its colour. I'm quite surprised at that actually. But remember, the colour of your beer depends on a few things. One, the type of malts that you use. This goes a long way to determining your EBC rating. Two, the length of your wort boil is going to play a role, because the longer you boil the wort, the more the sugars caramelise, and thus you get a darker colour of beer. But any barrel aging that you do or adjuncts you put into the beer will affect its colour as well. And that, you know, when it comes to these more kind of wild ales, if we can call them that, I think you have to put Brettanomyces in the kind of wild ale category. You know, those things can affect the beer a little bit. So the cherries will no doubt be playing a slight role in the colour of this one, but certainly not as much as other cherry beers that I've seen, such as the creeks and things like that. So the colour in this one is quite, yeah, it is quite interesting looking, I have to say. So yeah, I think appearance wise it looks pretty nice, but I'm just surprised that it's so light, to be honest with you, and it's not a little bit redder. But yeah, in terms of a Bretted beer, a Bretted golden sour or whatever you want to call it, it's pretty much in line with that. There's not too much in the way of visible carbonation with this one. You can see a few bubbles coming up and breaking the surface there. It does have a little bit of natural haze to it as well, but all in all it looks like quite a nice beer, I have to say. So yeah, I think we can leave it at that for the appearance section. Let's go on and have a little look at the aroma of this beer then. Aroma and taste are always more interesting, I guess. Well, for sure I should say. Brain's not working. Oh, I have to say, this one, out of the three, this of course is the one I think smells sharpest. This one's got the most kind of tartness and things to it. I think we can safely say that. Yeah, this one has got a lovely kind of, just a lovely little bit of tartness to it for sure. But it gives you everything you would want from one of these woody, Bretted, sour type beers. It smells lovely. You've got a bit of the woodiness in there, the bread, the kind of funky notes that it was talking about, nice little bit of green component, and of course you've got the fruity character to it. So let's just break this down and describe the aroma for you a little bit more in depth. So the backbone of the beer, you've got a lovely little bit of that kind of fresh, kind of brown bready, wholemeal kind of bread crust in there. So yeah, the way that that goes together in this one, I think, is it's really, really nice. So yeah, fresh kind of brown bready bread crust in there, a little bit of woodiness. Yeah, you've definitely got a little bit of that woodiness within the bread crusty character, and a lot of Jacob's cream cracker, that's for sure. So yeah, lots and lots of Jacob's cream cracker in this one. So yeah, for me, the Jacob's cream crackery notes that come out of this kind of linger a little bit, but on top of that, there's a lovely, yeah, there's a lovely little bit of, how would we say, yeah, there's a little touch of, I don't know, is it right to say there's almost a little bit of buttery note to it? But yeah, there's Jacob's cream cracker in here. There's a more, yeah, you do get a little bit of that wholemeal brown bread as well. So that I really do like. So yeah, wholemeal brown bread in there. And then on top of that, some fresher white bread. I'm wondering if there's a little bit of wheat in this one, maybe, because I do smell like a slightly denser white bread in this one, but there's no real bitiness to it. So I think, yeah, I think there probably isn't wheat in this one, but certainly one or two signs of it. But yeah, wholemeal brown bread, fresher white bread in there, slightly denser white bread as well. And then I'm getting little hints of, yeah, I'm getting little hints of biscuit and things coming out of this one. So there's a wee bit of like McVitie's digestive biscuit in there, a more how would you say, a more sort of, how would we say, a little bit of like a Werther's Original butter candy, butterscotchy type note as well. So yeah, the way that all of that, the way that that goes together, I think, is really quite nice. So I think we've said everything we need about the kind of malty side of the beer. It's showing you everything you want, mostly bready character, a little bit of woodiness, a little bit of cracker, everything you'd kind of expect in that sense. So the yeasty character at the back of the nose, and of course this is where the focus really is with the a Brettanomyces, a Brett sour if you like. So for me, at the back of the nose, that's where you get the kind of funky side of the beer coming out. So for me, yeah, the yeasty character in this one, it smells like quite densely brown bready. There's a slightly brighter and sweeter brown bread to it as well, but there's lots of woodiness in there, a kind of rusticy, is it right to say like farmhousey sourdough type bready character? But yeah, there's cracker in there for sure. Yeah, more dense brown bread, lighter brown bread, a wee bit of a a wee bit of a more there's a wee bit of a more there's a lot of that woodiness in there, more crackery notes. Kind of reminds me a little bit of knäckebröd, the sort of Scandinavian cracker sort of thing. And then a little bit of a bread crusty, white bready bread crusty note to it as well, which is really interesting. But yeah, all in all, the malty yeasty side of this beer is pretty nice, and it's showing you everything you'd kind of expect of a Bretted sour, as I've said a few times. Now let's look at the hoppy and fruity side of things with this beer, and we know that this beer does contain hops. It tells us on the bottle. But yeah, when it comes to sour beers and wild ales and things, it's always interesting to ask a brewer about their hopping mentality. If you go to the original Belgian sour beers and the sour beers from Germany and things like that, the Gozes and the Berliner Weisses and so on, what they used to do with these beers is, particularly with the Belgian ones, they would add older hops to the beer that had lost a little bit of their alpha acid potency so that it wouldn't detract from the sourness of the beer. Now with modern sour beers, like the smoothie sours and so on, a lot of brewers will argue that because you're adding fruit into the beer as an adjunct, that's going to suppress the green component anyway, so you don't really need to add the hops to the beer. But other brewers will argue that if you add the hops in, it just gives the beer a little bit more depth of flavour. Both valid arguments, of course. So whenever you encounter a sour beer brewery, always interesting to ask them, ask the brewer their thoughts on that. But this one does contain hops, and you do get a little bit of green component out of this beer. So let's have a little look at the aroma and just see what we get. So for me, the green component in this one, it's almost kind of German and noble-like. So there's a little light earthiness in there, very smooth earthiness. I would add a little bit of herbal character, but then you've got some really nice, you've got some lovely kind of floral aromatic notes out of this one. A good little bit of kind of grassiness as well. And the grassiness, I think, is the part of the green, and the grassy and the floral notes are the part of the green component that shine through that little bit more. So the way that all of that pieces together, I think, is really, really nice. So yeah, it gets a big thumbs up from me, this beer. I really like how all of this pieces together. Aroma-wise, I think this is pretty nice in terms of the green component as well. You just get that nice little bit of grassy edge to the beer, makes it feel a bit fresh. Now when it comes to the fruity side of things, it's kind of what you'd expect. You can smell the sharpness of the cherries in the beginning, but as your nose adjusts to it, the cherries become a little bit more juicy, and underneath that, there's little hints of like, you do get little hints of like plum and strawberry and stuff like this. Maybe prune is better, it feels like a little bit more of a dry fruit, but juicy strawberries underneath. As I say, a little touch of plum for me as well. But the cherry is distinctly noticeable in this one, as you'd expect. yeah, all in all, aroma of this beer is very, very nice. And as I always say, just take a little bit of time to enjoy the aroma of your beer before you get stuck into it. But I think it is about time that we have a taste of this one then and see what it's all about. So yeah, this one is the Happy Camping, a 6.5% Bretted Cherry Sour from the wonderful Deadman Brewery in Sampo Kong, Kowloon here in Hong Kong. Let's get stuck into this one. Slàinte, skål, cheers. Yeah, that's nice. I will say that, yeah. This one is pretty nice. This one is definitely the most sour of the three. I mean, you wouldn't expect the Saison to be particularly sour. You'd expect that to be more funky, but this is definitely more sour than the Frank on Sled was, the orange Bretted sour. The orange sour was a bit more kind of juicy and things, but then again, you would kind of expect that. Cherry is a more tart fruit than orange. The orange is a bit more kind of zesty in a way, but yeah, this is definitely the sourest of the three for sure, and out of the two that would be more sour, it is the more sour one too, if that makes sense. Feels like a ramble, but yeah, again, really nice beer, this one, and it strikes me as a sort of summery beer. Like, I think they released, I'm really not sure when they released these, I actually forgot, but yeah, these beers would be ideal in the summer. So that's one thing I would recommend for Deadman. If they're going to do these again, produce them so that they're ready around, you know, sort of April or May time. So yeah, interesting stuff though. So thumbs up. You know, we know that Deadman now, they can do, yeah, we know that Deadman can do the Bretted sours and things quite well, and these were some of the last things that Jason brewed, I think, before he left. But yeah, let's just go through this beer then and break it down. But I'll tell you, it gives you everything you want. You've got the nice woodiness from the Brettanomyces, you've got the bread in there, the green component, and also that nice little bit of fruitiness as well. So yeah, lovely stuff. So yeah, let's go to the middle third of the palate then. Backbone of the beer. I would say this one, it smelled a bit more brown bready in the flavour, but I would say the backbone of this beer, it's actually more like a kind of white bready bread crust on that middle third of your palate. As you move further forward, it's got a little bit of a more woody character coming out of it. So yeah, the woodiness in there is very, very nice. Then above that, so yeah, white bready bread crust, a little bit of woodiness in there. Jacob's cream cracker sitting on top of that, but the cracker's not as obvious in this one as it was in the others, interestingly. I think what I'm going to do is sugar up the bottom of this and just put in the last bit, because obviously with these beers you do get that little bit of sediment and things, so we want to make sure we are getting a proper representation. So yeah, not too much sediment in the bottom of this bottle actually, so that's worth keeping in mind. But let's just take another little look at that. Yeah, no, not too much different. Yeah, white bready bread crust, a little bit of woody character further forward on that middle third of your palate. The cracker, the Jacob's cream cracker sits on top of that. You've got the wholemeal, yeah, you've got the wholemeal brown bready layer in there, which, yeah, you've got the wholemeal brown bready layer in there, which sits on top of that, which is nice. So yeah, wholemeal brown bready layer sits on top of that. Then you've got the fluffy white bready layer on top of that one, which feels a little bit taller, if you like, I would say that. But both bready characters in this one, I'd say they come across as a little bit more sweet than I remember in the other two, which is interesting as well. And then above that white bready layer, it does feel like there's a slightly more dense bready layer as well, more kind of white bready, but I hesitate to say there's a bit of wheat in this, but it wouldn't surprise me if there was. But then again, there's no bitiness really on the back third of your palate, which would be one of the telltale signs of of wheat. But yeah, brown bready, yeah, I think that the kind of brown bready character in this one is definitely sweeter. This beer is less grainy into the aftertaste. The white bread also feels a little bit sweeter. Then yeah, you've got that more dense white bready layer sitting above that. The next layer up is like a kind of McVitie's digestive biscuity kind of layer. So yeah, there's a nice kind of McVitie's digestive biscuity sort of layer to this one. And then in the dead centre of your palate, you've just got that little circle there where you get a wee hint of like Werther's original butter candy butterscotch, but it's really not that sweet in all honesty. It's just a little bit of that, and that flavour of course is coming from the alcohol. But that covers the middle third of your palate in this beer. Let's go to the back third of your palate, and as I've often said, sweeter flavours come out further forward on the palate, more dry and bitter flavours come out further back, and generally speaking between middle and back third of your palate you're going to get very similar flavours, just kind of at different intensities. So yeah, the border region between middle and back third of your palate, you get that nice little bit of bready build up in there. In the base you've got the kind of wholemeal brown bready character. Above that you've got the white bready barley malt in there, then a wee bit of a more dense almost wheaty like white bread on top of that. But yeah, the base of that back third of your palate, the base of that back third of your palate, you've got the kind of white bready bread crust in the base there, which is a little bit drier. Above that you've got the Jacob's cream cracker. The brown bready layer is a little bit lighter, taller and more airy for sure. Then above that you've got the white bready layer, which again feels a little bit lighter, taller, more airy. They still have a little bit of sweetness on that back third of the palate, right enough, but then yeah, you can feel the slightly more dense, sweety white bready character creeping over the top of that. And then above everything else, it's about the about the yeast. So yeah, the yeasty character that comes out of this one, I think, is quite interesting, because yeah, that's what you're going to get from the Brettanomyces. So let's look at that yeasty side of things. So yeah, yeasty side of the beer for me. I think out of the three actually as well, this one is the one that I would have been least likely to guess there was Brett in there. But yeah, so at its core, the yeasty character is like quite a dense and slightly sweet brown bread. As you move out from that core, it shows you a little bit more of a kind of grainy brown bread, like it's got a bit more of a woody, crackery sort of note to it as well. So yeah, it's got more of a kind of woody, crackery sort of note to it, which I really, really like. And then yeah, I feel there's a little bit of white bread around that, and then yeah, a bit of white bready kind of bread crusting, sort of crackery notes as well. So yeah, dense wholemeal brown bread in the middle, a more grainy and woody sort of white bready character on the edge, white bready character, then yeah, a wee bit of like a bread crust, a white bread crusty note around the edge. But yeah, definitely back third of your palate you can feel the flavour is taller. Then as you move further forward into the middle third of your tongue, it just kind of condenses down and squashes together that little bit more. So yeah, I think the way the malty and yeasty side of this beer goes together is really, really nice. But yeah, let's move on then and talk about the green component and then the fruity side of things. So yeah, green component then with this one. Again, it's quite German and noble-like. You get a little bit of smooth earthiness in the back corners of the palate. Then as you move further forward, it's just a little touch herbal there, if you like, and maybe very slightly woody, and which builds a good bridge with the Brettanomyces, incidentally. But yeah, as you push further forward from that, it's got a little bit more of a kind of floral note to it, and round the front curve of the tongue, it's just a wee bit lighter and more. It's a wee bit lighter and more grassy, I would say. So yeah, the way that this one goes together, I think, is very, very nice. Yeah, the green component just adds a wee bit more complexity to the beer, I would say. So yeah, right. Let's focus on the front third of your palate then and the fruity side of things. I will say you can feel some of the cherry and sort of strawberry flavours spreading around the sides of your palate too. So that goes back to what I was saying earlier about the fruity adjuncts kind of suppressing green component a little bit. But yeah, front third of your palate then. The border region between front and middle third of your palate, again, a little bit of bready build up in there. The brown bread in the base, the barley malt white bread in the middle, then the more dense white bready wheaty character on top. Then yeah, the base of that front third of your palate, white bready bread crust, cracker, brown bread, white bread, the more dense wheaty white bread, which is very, very smooth incidentally on that front third of your palate. And then yeah, you get that nice oily bubble where the juicy fruity esters roll the way out of the beer, and of course you've got the adjunct fruity flavours just coming in on top of that as well. So let's have a wee look at those. Yeah. So for me, the fruity, the part that it's almost like the fruity oily bubble in there. There is like a little slight hint of like sultana and maybe a very, very slight apricot in this one. But from the oily, hoppy side of the beer, it feels very strawberry-like, you know. There's maybe a little bit like further back on the front third of your palate, it's maybe a little bit slightly plummy with some sultana. And I think the sultana is what's giving me that slightly peary, apricot-y note that the beer has. But yeah, as you move further forward into the kind of front half of that front third of your palate, it's a little bit more about the it's a little bit more about the kind of strawberry sort of notes as well. So I really like how that I really do like how that goes together in this one. And on top of that, you start to get the cherry notes. So when it comes to sour beers, we should talk about the impact of this one. The cherries in here are actually, for me, quite juicy and not overly tart. The Danish cherries, the Stensberg ones that I'm a bit more used to, those are a lot, you know, they've got a bit more punch to them. These cherries are quite soft and juicy, and I have to say I do like it. It's just an observation, not a critique, if that makes sense. But yeah, the cherry notes come in and sit on top of everything else, and they're just lingering there, giving you that nice juiciness and slight tartness into the aftertaste. But the impact flavour of this beer is not so punchy, it's not so big almost. Yeah, the sort of fruity side of this beer isn't the fruity side of this beer is really nice, and as I say, it gives you, I get a lot of the strawberry kind of notes they're talking about into the aftertaste, but the cherry is more the impact flavour, and some of that kind of tartness, it lingers there into the aftertaste, and I do like how that goes together. So flavour wise, thumbs up for me. This is definitely the most sour of the three that they've released, but it's still quite soft and juicy, and I think the bready character, the maltiness, is also the sweetest of the three as well. So this one's quite different to the other two, that's for sure. But yeah, I think we can leave it at that for the flavour section of the video. Let's round off with a wee quick look at the mouthfeel. For me, the mouthfeel of this beer, I would say it's mid-bodied, right in the middle of the spectrum. It does actually still feel like quite clean in a way. You can feel the water profile in this one feels very, very clean for me. It's got a little bit of crispness from the carbonation, but not overly much. A very, let's say, very clean drinking beer, this one. With it being a Brett sour, it's quite, it does give you that little bit of dryness and things too, which I really like. So yeah, you get that little bit of dryness into the aftertaste, but overall the beer is kind of juicy and kind of smooth rather than anything else. So yeah, the malt bay, in terms of IBUs, this beer will be very low. It'll be about 10 IBUs at the absolute most, something like that, maybe, yeah, I think 10 rather than 15. But yeah, the malty side of the beer, a bit drier underneath, smoother in the middle, and very slightly sweet on top. The yeasty side of this one is, has a little bit of dryness to it as well, and then yeah, you've got that lovely little bit of juicy fruitiness to the beer as well, and it's got yeah, a little bit of sharpness in the beginning too. So yeah, the way it goes together, I think, is really nice. This one, it's got a little bit of sour sharpness in the beginning, and then it just mellows out really nicely and gives you more of a juiciness. And of course, the malty side of this beer has the wee bit of sweetness that lingers into the aftertaste too, and you get that wee bit of woody, crackery dryness that you want from a Brettanomyces sour. But yeah, I think that's everything we need to say about this beer. This has been another really nice one from the guys at Deadman. So yeah, this was the Happy Camping, a 6.5% cherry Bretted sour from the wonderful Deadman Brewery in Sampo Kong, Kowloon here in Hong Kong. So once again, thank you for watching my beer reviews. Until the next time, please like, subscribe, share, all the usual YouTube stuff. Let me know your own thoughts on this beer in the comments section below. Let me know what your favourite beers are from Deadman Brewery as well, and we will no doubt return to these guys again at some point in the fairly near future. But until then, check out my social media, check out their social media, and I will see you guys in another review very, very soon. Ciao just now.